friends, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you are watching this video. We are here for the revision of paper 3, Cost and Management Accounting, a 100 marks paper. And topic of this video is process and operation costing. So this is the topic which is repeated in the exam frequently. You can get good amount of marks because it's a very easy topic. But then at the same time, a good revision will surely help in achieving marks. So without waiting more, let us begin with the topic of process costing and operation costing. Of course, let's go to the notes directly. There are the notes in front of you. First, let us understand few basic terms here. What is process? In certain industries, output passes through various stages of completion. Now, each stage of completion in technical words is known as process. Like for example, in cloth industry, in cloth industry, let's say for example, you first have to take the cotton, clean it. After cleaning it, you have to weave it and then probably dye it. So 3 different stages of completion I spoke about. Spinning, that is cleaning, technical words known as spinning. Weaving, to weave it, and dyeing. 3 major stage of completion. Each of them will be known as process. Of course, these examples are not too technical. We are supposed to be looking about the accounting aspect of the same, and hence I am concentrating more on the accounting aspects, which is our requirement. Then, next term, basic raw materials. Like in my example, we needed cotton to begin the whole process. So that is known as the basic raw material. Of course, from problem point of view, we can also call it as the raw materials introduced. Some problems you use those words. Next term, or a combination of terms, if I may admit, process material, process labor, process overheads. These are those material, labor and overheads which are incurred in an individual process. So for example, let's talk about the dyeing process wherein you have to add the color. Now that color will become material of that process. At the very same time, every process will have its own laborers and there might be overheads for every process for its own self. So those will be known as process labor and process overheads. In simple words, all these are costs which are charged to process account, agreed. But then these terms we must understand. Now I move on to something very, very important as a term, output. What is output? Well, to put it in simple words, output is the result of an individual process. Output is the result of an individual process. So if something gets made in process 1, then that will be known as an output of process 1. But naturally, output of process 1 will become input of process 2, or in other words, output of earlier process will become input of the next process. Even my example is telling you that process A will send its output to process B. So process A is known as a giving process, process B will be known as a receiving process, and this output of process A, which will be received by process B, will be considered as an item of material cost for process B. That is output. Guys, these things are very, very critical for you to understand so many accounting treatments. See, I accept and I respect that we are doing revision. So we need to stick to revision rather than going in too much detail. But then at the same point of time, few things which are required to be studied, we will have to study. We cannot compromise on the same. And well, that leads me to the next term. finished goods. If you understood the word output, you will surely understand the word finished goods. Finished goods is nothing else but output of the final process. Or I can always use the words, it is the result of the final process. Those are the basic terms, which is very critical to solve the problems, because we keep on coming across those terms on a fairly regular basis. But now if you understand, my dear friends, something, then so many accounting treatments will get clear because of this point. Listen to me very carefully. I would like to explain the word process costing itself. What is process costing? It is a method of costing which is used by an organization to record all the transactions related to process. There might be multiple transactions, we just saw material, labor, overheads, etc. All those transactions will have to be recorded. We use the method of process costing to record those transactions. What do we do for this purpose? We open a separate account for each process. I repeat, we open a separate account for each process, and all the transactions relating to that process will be recorded in its own account. So, if there are few transactions related to process A, then we will record in its account, that is process A account. Whereas, if there are some transactions which are related to process B, then we will record that in process B account. A separate account is opened for each process. But why? What's the objective? Very important sentence, my dear friend, coming up. The objective of preparing a process account is to find out normal cost per unit. That is the objective, and hence practically the whole process account is maintained at cost. In fact, the real name of the process account, or I can even use the word the full name, is process cost account. So we usually call it process A account, process B account. It's actually process A cost account or process B cost account. Yes, that's what is the reason of so many multiple treatments that you usually do in process account. Now, since I have spoken the word process account, I'll bring up process account in front of you. That's it. That's the process account right in front of you. Now, for the time being, just for the time being, ignore those WIP parts, just for the time being. We are doing the basics of the chapter, so for the time being, just ignore that. And if you look at the process account, then we have covered most of the items: materials, labor, expenses, that is direct expenses, factory overheads, output also we have covered for that matter. But then you see three new words, three different words: normal loss, and abnormal gain. Let us discuss a little bit about all of them. What is normal loss? Normal loss is something which is bound to happen and you can't control it according to the theory. It's something which is bound to happen. Whereas abnormal loss is unexpected loss. Abnormal loss is unexpected loss. Logically, normal loss is something which you are expecting to happen. Whereas you don't expect abnormal loss to happen, but it happens. And abnormal gain, once again, it's unexpected gain. You don't expect it to happen, but it happens. So now let's take a very simple example to understand this point. Of course, I'll connect it with another example, but then just a basic example. Let's say you input 100 units and according to you 10 units will be lost normally. So that is normal loss according to you. That is expected loss according to you. Now, just in case you lose 10 more units at the end. So now your total loss is 20, but 10 you were expecting, 10 you were not expecting. 10 is normal loss, the other 10 is abnormal loss. And at the same time, at the very same time, same scenario, but a different situation. You were expecting 10 units to be lost, but at the end you actually lose only 5 units. You get 5 units more as an output, then those 5 units are known as abnormal gain. Let me take a very simple example, not some great concept that I'm trying to put in my this example, but then just to make you understand my point. Let's say mom wants output of 8 cups of tea. So she put 10 cups of tea as an input, all the material related to 10 cups. Because according to her, 2 cups will be lost. Wait. In reality, 2 cups may not be lost. My tea making knowledge is not great. I humbly apologize in case my example is not comforting you. 2 cups fit in my example, that is why I'm taking. I'm not here to make tea or to understand all that. I apologize. Otherwise, someone will say, no, sir, 2 cups are not lost. Arey, how do I know, man? Just try to understand. We go further. So, mom expects 2 cups to be lost. 10 cups, material worth of 10 cups she puts. Now, that means 10 minus 2, 8 units is expected output. Now, in this case, if a situation arises where 3 additional cups are boiled over, 2 cups were anyway supposed to go in material, etc. But 3 additional cups are boiled over. Then, in that case, those 3 additional cups which boiled over are known as abnormal loss. You just have to thank God that it was not you who ensured that boiling over. Otherwise, we all know, myself included, how much the trouble can happen. I'm with you. Totally. Yeah, of course. But then, same scenario, different situation. Mom expected 2 cups to be lost. 1 cup only got lost. And mom got an output of 9 cups. So 8 cups anyways were expected. 1 cup is additional. That 1 cup is known as abnormal gain. So from those examples, if you have understood those terms, I'll put few more points related to both of them, or 3 of them, if at all you would like to take it that way. Normal loss, expected. Abnormal loss, abnormal gain, unexpected. We record normal loss on expected basis, whereas we will record abnormal loss and abnormal gain only when we come to know about it, in other words, on actual basis. Normal loss will be valued at scrap value, and it will also be sold at a scrap value. Abnormal loss will be valued at cost. It will be sold at scrap. Of course, in some questions, in fact, we even have a question like that, wherein abnormal loss might be sold at a little higher value than the scrap value for normal loss. Quite possible. And abnormal gain, if it belongs to full units, then it will be sold at a normal selling price. For understanding purpose, we can say that we will not consider normal loss as an output item, whereas abnormal loss and abnormal gain we will consider as an output item. Now, all this whole nonsense I have put in a table which I'll bring right in front of you. Just wait for a second. And the table is right in front of you. You can please see it. I would like to be invisible. And you must have read whatever was there. As you can see, everything, including an example and of course a relationship point, wherein if it's a normal loss, then expected and actual output will be same, whereas in case of the abnormal loss, expected output will be more than the actual output, and in case of the abnormal gain, expected output will be less than actual output. The whole thing I put in the table. You can read this at your convenience. Now, after discussing all this, I want to discuss still few extra points. For that, I'll have to take you to the board. Give me 1 minute. The board is right in front of you. As I said, I want to discuss few extra points. Please pay attention. Let's say you input 100 units and you expect 10 units to be lost normally, and you expect an output of 90 units. But let's say you don't get 90 units, you get 80 units in your hand. So you lost 10 units extra. Those 10 units are nothing else but abnormal loss. Same scenario, different situation. Let's say same 100 units, 10 units you expect to be losing, and you expect 90 units as your output, but you get 95 units. So you get 5 units extra in your hand. That 5 units is nothing else but abnormal gain. And a point which I would like to put in front of you in this is that these 5 units are included in 95. How? Simple. 100 units input, 10 units normal loss. You were expecting 95? No. You were expecting 90 units to come out of that. But 5 units came out as extra. There's nothing else but abnormal gain. So my dear friends, abnormal gain is included in actual output. Now, we just learned that abnormal gain units are included in actual output. I want to explain few more points. First of them, normal loss units is what I want to talk about. Cost of normal loss units is borne by good units, and hence cost of good units is inflated. Let us take that point further to understand. Let's say there is a tea vendor who sells tea in a roadside shop, small shop that he has. He puts all the material, worth rupees 40, milk, tea, powder, water, whatever you call it, puts material worth rupees 40 for 10 cups. Naturally, his cost per unit is 4 per cup. But you know, I know, all of us know that he is not going to get full 10 cups as his output. Let's say, for example, he loses 2 cups, or he will lose 2 cups as normal loss. Disclaimer, I don't know whether it will be actually 2 or more. I have limited knowledge in making tea. I humbly apologize for that, but this is what maximum I can explain. In my example, 2 fits. So I'll talk about 2. Okay. Otherwise, people will start giving me technical knowledge. No, sir, it's not 2, it's more, it's less. I'm not bothered here. Come on, pay attention. Let's say he expects 2 cups to be lost as his normal loss. Now, ₹40 worth of material he has kept, but then his normal loss is 2 units. So 10 minus 2 even he knows that he has to recover his entire cost from 8 cups. So naturally he will calculate his cost for 8 cups, and this cost is 5 per cup. Cost of normal loss units is borne by good units, and hence cost of good units is inflated. Earlier it was 4, but now it is 5. I just told you that. Now let's take this further to understand one more point. Little further example. 5 per cup is his cost. He wants profit of 1 per cup. So 6 per cup is his selling price. Another point that I would like to put forward in front of you, normal loss is passed on to the customer. Abnormal loss or abnormal gain is not passed on to the customer. I'll just continue this example further. This is the normal scenario, my dear friends, presently. So 5 per cup is his cost. 2 units of course are normal loss. 1 per cup is his profit, so he wants 6 per cup as his selling price. Now let's say on one day there is a fight on the road and he goes to observe the fight. On that day, rather than 2 cups being lost as normal loss, which generally anyway will happen, 3 more cups gets boiled over. 3 more cups gets boiled over. So on that day he loses 5 cups. So 40 upon 10 minus 5. Naturally that 5 has a breakup of 2 normal, 3 abnormal of course. So now his cost on this day will be 8 per cup. If he wants profit of 1 per cup, if he offers you tea at 9 per cup, certainly you will not pay. You will not agree. You will simply say that that is your carelessness. You were not paying attention on your work. I'll not bear for it. No customer will agree for the same. Let's take another scenario. Let's say situation remaining the same, 40 rupees worth of material he puts on the gas stove, whatever you call it. But on that day there is no loss at all. For one or the other reason there was no loss. So that day his cost is 4 per cup. He wants profit of 1 per cup. He'll sell it at 5 per cup. Will that be possible? Certainly not. That he himself will not agree. He'll say that my normal selling price is 6 per cup. If I start selling at 5 today, tomorrow also customer will ask at 5 only. And that will be a loss. I'll not accept it. So both the situations which I just mentioned will not be acceptable. Only this situation is acceptable. So only normal loss can be passed on to the customer, but abnormal loss and abnormal gain will never be passed on to the customer. In fact, that's how when we calculate cost per unit of every process, what do? We calculate the total cost. See, by now you know very well that cost of the process is recorded on the debit side. So total of debit. What was 10? 10 was input units. What was 2? 2 was normal loss units. And my dear friends, sadly this tea vendor cannot sell any normal loss of his. It's sad, I agree. But then if it would have been any other situation, like for example a carpenter who can sell his scrap in the market, he'll earn something. that will have an effect of reducing the cost. So we will subtract it. Normal loss in rupees, which is nothing else but scrap value. That's how we calculate the cost per unit. So we only pass on normal loss to the customer. Abnormal loss or gain is never passed on to the customer, my dear friends. Now, this was the basic theory of process costing. We need to move to the questions. 2 questions we will take, which is based on the basic theory, and then of course from there we will take it further. So basic theory is now done. Okay, now with that I'll take 2-3 questions, 2 to be precise. We will go to the textbook. Give me 1 minute. That's the textbook. That's the first question. In case you remember, very simple question. Yes, lengthy one, no doubt, because 3 processes and you had to prepare 3 abnormal loss, abnormal gain and normal loss account also extra. So yes, long problem, I don't deny, but a simple problem. Nothing great involved in this problem. First process, only normal loss, no abnormal loss, no abnormal gain. Second process, normal loss and abnormal loss. Third process, normal loss and abnormal gain. Don't forget, we have to adjust abnormal gain units against normal loss units, and that we do in its own account. In process accounts, abnormal loss and abnormal gain both were valued at normal cost per unit. That was the highlight of this particular question, but apart from that, there was nothing great involved. Yes, one last point, any balancing figure in abnormal loss and abnormal gain we transferred to costing P&L account. That was first question. Nothing great to worry about, but lengthy one, I don't deny. As far as second question goes, we were given the selling price practically identical to first question except that sales were involved. I repeat, practically identical to first question except that sales were involved. So some part of the output of process A was transferred to the second process so that it can be processed further, and some part of output of process A was sold. So we transferred that to costing P&L, we recorded sales over there. Naturally, process B being the last process, we transferred entire output of process B to costing P&L and we sell it over there. First process included normal loss and abnormal loss. Second process included normal loss and abnormal gain. Again, don't forget to adjust abnormal gain units with normal loss units. Balancing figure of abnormal loss and abnormal gain account, we will transfer it to costing P&L account, and finally we will calculate, of course it's a costing P&L, so final profit or loss in costing P&L account. These were 2 questions based on the basic theory of process costing. Now we move on to valuation of work in progress, or as popularly as it is known, concept of equivalent production. First we have to do that theory and then I'll remind you a few questions. Now moving on to concept of equivalent production or valuation of work in progress, as I just said. For that I need to bring about the screen of board. Just give me 1 minute. Now the question arises, so why do we need it? Why do we need this concept of equivalent production? Why we need to do this valuation of work in progress this way? Let me remind you for this that we did valuation of closing stock of finished goods in cost sheet itself. So no worries regarding that. Valuation of work in progress is a troublesome situation because of the name itself. It's work in progress. These are those units which are not completed. They are somewhere in process. Now, try to understand. A very pertinent to remind you a question, or rather a statement, should I use the words? In cost accounting, stocks are valued at cost. And the question arises that how do we value work in progress? Don't we know the cost? We do know the cost, but that cost is of fully completed units. Work in progress are partially completed units. We don't know that. So how to value? We follow a very simple technique. What do we do for that? We convert these partially completed units into completed equivalent units. And then for us, they remain completed units. Of course, not in reality. This is for accounting purpose. I hope all of you agree. But still, this is what we do. So, let's say there are 100 units which are incomplete, or shall I put it this way now, there are 100 units which are only 25% complete. So, we say that these are 125 completed equivalent units. So now, how did we calculate this completed equivalent units? This was incomplete units. Into 25%, that was nothing else but degree of completion. Is equal to completed equivalent units. Now, after understanding this, let me tell you one more thing. For explaining this technique further, let me tell you that we generally prepare 3 standard working notes. I repeat, we generally prepare 3 standard working notes, and then we get our valuation of closing stock of work in progress. But for explaining that, I'll need a fresh page. I want to take a fresh page. Just give me a second. First working note, what we call it is working note 1, statement of equivalent production. In this working note, what do we do? Simple. If we do exactly what I just discussed, we convert incomplete units into completed equivalent units. So for that, we first write output items. We write the total quantity of the same. And then we write all those cost items which we have incurred and of course recorded on the debit side of process account to make these output items. I'll repeat. We first write output items, then we write total quantity, and then we create columns for all those cost items which we have incurred to make the output items. Of course, these cost items are the ones which we have recorded in process account. So now comes the time to determine how many cost columns we prepare? Never ever worry. Same amount of cost columns which we have incurred as cost items and recorded in process account. So if in process account we have recorded 3 cost items, then we will prepare 3 columns. If we have incurred or if we have recorded 5 cost items, then we will create 5 columns. It's as simple as that. 3 major cost columns I'll just prepare for our understanding purpose: direct material, direct labor, and overheads. Quantity, percentage, quantity, percentage, quantity, and percentage. So let's say one output item I take, closing WIP. Its total quantity I record here. Percentage of completion I record here. And then I multiply this quantity with the completion percentage and I get this quantity. Now, we basically write, guys, this is a very important sentence, listen to me very carefully. We basically write that percentage of completion which we have achieved in the current period. We basically write that percentage of completion which we have achieved in the current period. This remains a golden statement for filling up this particular table. There are varieties. I know there are varieties. It will come further. I don't deny that. In fact, there are methods based on that. There will be some changes here. I agree. But this statement remains the golden statement. We write that percentage of completion which we have achieved in the current period. Or I can always put it this way, that percentage processing which we have done in the current period. Whichever word that suits you, you can take it. That's how we go further. Now, for simplicity purpose, let's call them A, B, and C. Similarly, there will be multiple output items. You total all of them. These are the total equivalent unit produced in the current year, current period, whatever you prefer to call it, month, depends upon the question. Now, in the second working note, we calculate cost per equivalent unit. So what do? Simple. We take those cost amounts which we have incurred or charged in the current year or current period, current month, as again depending upon the question, which we have recorded in the process account. We will take that as a numerator and we divide that with number of equivalent units produced, which we found in working note number 1. So what do we get? We get cost per equivalent unit over here. Guys, I again repeat, some detailed explanation is bound to come later. I'm just trying to give you a basic essence of all these three working notes. No doubt about that, some detailed explanation is needed in this topic. Yes, I know it's a revision, but then we need to do it even revision properly, isn't it? So let's say you get cost per equivalent unit for material, labor, overheads. Let's term it as 1, 2 and 3. And in third working note, what do? We do cost apportionment. In third working note, we do cost apportionment. Naturally, the example that I have taken is closing WIP. So direct material, direct labor and overheads. Our calculated equivalent units, if you can see again, were A, B and C. Our cost per equivalent unit was 1, 2, 3 and we get the amount of cost apportioned to closing WIP. No doubt our basic objective is valuation of closing WIP. I don't deny that. But then at the same point of time, my dear friends, at the very same point of time, one of another objective gets fulfilled, is that whatever cost that we have incurred in the process, which we have recorded on the debit side of process account, gets apportioned to all the output items which are appearing on the credit side of process account, and with that we also are able to value closing stock of WIP. This is the basic essence of all these three notes, my dear friends. So now, after understanding the basic essence of all these notes, I will solve a problem on FIFO. Later on, I'll also solve one problem on weighted average method. That is the only way to make you revise this particular chapter, has lots of varieties. I'll bring the textbook in front of you and I'll tell you which problem I'm solving. Give me 1 minute. That is the problem. Question number 4. They have given the opening work in progress 8,000 units at 75,000 rupees in all. Degree of completion is given material 100 and labor and overhead 60. Input of materials, wages paid and overheads paid. They have given units scrap to me in the question, degree of completion of that as well. Material, labor, overheads, that is wages and overheads. Closing work in progress, again units given 18,000 and the degree of completion is given 170. For the total that units completed and transferred to the next process 1,58,000 units. Normal loss 5% of total input including opening WIP. Scrap value is 5 per unit to be adjusted out of direct material cost. You are required to compute so many things. For your time saving purpose, for the purpose of saving your time, I have kept a process account ready. I have kept the basic calculations ready and then I will solve. Give me 1 minute, I'll bring the process account in front of you. That is the basic process account ready with calculation of even abnormal loss. This is revision. All of you can do debit, credit, etc. and reach at this level. They have said how to calculate normal loss. I have written a detailed note, 5% of total input including opening WIP. So 5% of 8,000 plus 1,82,000, 9,500 units. 9,500 units into 5 per unit, 47,500 rupees. And that I put into the process account. I can see 9,500 as normal loss. Abnormal loss is the balancing figure of the quantity column. What I would like to tell you is this. Guys, just one small second. Yup, made it little more visible. I realized abnormal loss of 14,500 right at the time when I got normal loss of 9,500. How? Check the question. They have said units scrapped 14,500. So when I say 14,500 units scrapped, out of that your normal loss, or you can now even use the words units normally scrapped, is 9,500. Naturally balancing figure of 4,500 will be abnormally scrapped. That's it guys, that's the basic calculation. Now with this I'll take a fresh page and I will begin solving through FIFO. There comes the fresh page. Now on this fresh page, we solve this problem using FIFO. First in, first out. Now let us understand this further, my dear friends. Under FIFO, what do we consider? We consider that our output will be made up of two different items. Let me show you process account for that. And you can see 1,58,000 I believe. Now, yep, you can. 1,58,000 is your output. It will be made up of two factors. One, opening WIP, which naturally was in process at the beginning of this period. You will complete it. You will complete it and only then you can send it to the next process. It's so obvious. But the remaining units naturally will be those units which you would start in the current year and you would complete in the current year itself. In fact, only completed units can be sent to the next process. So the output will be bifurcated between these two. Let us do that. I'll write here FIFO, 1,58,000 units and divided in two parts. First is, as I just said, opening WIP, which you will process further and complete it. So I will write it processed further. And the other part will be units you will start in the current year, started and also complete, finished. This is 8,000 and naturally this will be 1,50,000. Obviously a balancing figure, this one. Now I need to create working note number 1. Statement of equivalent production. FIFO. Now guys, in this note, if you still remember, we convert incomplete units into completed equivalent units. I will write output items on the left. Two output items we have already found out. Opening WIP, processed further and unit started and finished. Let me write that. Output items. First output item is opening WIP, processed further. 2 units started and finished. I'm using short forms, of course. Now let us go to the process account to see what can be done. First, Normal loss. Normal loss does not affect expected output. So we have two approaches to deal with that. One, we write it in the statement of equivalent production and we ignore. Second, we don't write it at all. Both approaches are valid. We'll take the second one. We are not going to write it. Abnormal loss does affect expected output. Certainly, it will be part of my statement of equivalent production for having a look at closing WIP. Please make me invisible. Closing WIP was 18,000 units, as you just saw. Those are the units which you have started to make. You couldn't complete it. That's a different point altogether. And totally, should I use the words, my dear friends, please try to understand that it surely will be part of my statement of equivalent production. Let me write both of them now. Third, closing WIP, and fourth, abnormal loss. Now, let me write total quantities for all of them. So this was 8,000, this was 1,50,000. Closing WIP given in the question 18,000 units. Abnormal loss as calculated by me 4,500. Now after doing this much, we next will write cost items on the remaining part. So I give the heading as well, cost items. We write here those cost items which we have used to make the products which you can see on your screen as output items. And the question will arise right at this stage, how many columns, which cost items. You don't have to worry. I discussed this even at the beginning. I told you very clearly, we write those cost items which are recorded on the debit side of process account. So the number of cost columns will depend upon number of cost items recorded in process account. Like for example, this one, material, wages, overheads, 3 cost items. Surely 3 cost columns, no doubt about that fact. But then each cost item will have quantity percentage, quantity percentage, quantity percentage. Let me write that step by step. Quantity percentage for material, quantity and percentage for labor, quantity and percentage for overheads. We create all the lines which are required. Now, certainly direct material, direct labor and overheads, and the other headings quantity percentage for all of them. Next question, how to fill up the percentages? Pretty simple. I told you even this earlier, and I repeat again, we write those percentages which we have processed in the current year, current period, whatever you call it. We record those percentages here, which percentage processing we have achieved in the current period. Look at the question, look at opening WIP. What are the informations that you can see? You can see multiple informations over there. 8,000 units. Fair enough that we know that we have recorded 75,000. What is the meaning of 75,000? 75,000 rupees is what you have already incurred in the previous year, previous period, at the start of the process, at the start of the current year. You have already incurred that and you have completed certain part of this particular production. This is already incurred amount. Now the percentage degree of completion is given. Material says 100%, labor and overhead 60. What does that mean, my dear friends? What does that mean? Material was 100% complete, or rather I would use exact words. Material wise, opening WIP was 100% complete at the beginning of the year. Naturally, the question of processing anything further in that doesn't arise at all. It's already 100% complete. What will you process it further for? So this will be nil. I put nil over there as a dash. Labor wise, it is 60% complete. I repeat, labor wise, it is 60% complete. Labor wise, it is 60% complete, which basically means that you will process it further 40%. Only then the product will be completed. So I'll write here 40%. Same will go for overheads 40%. Unit started and finished. I mean, it's so simple, you know, that entire units are started in the current year. Those entire units are completed in the current year. Naturally, entire 100% processing has taken place in the current year itself. A polite reminder at this stage, I am assuming that you have revised the whole chapter before looking at this revision video. Don't forget that you need to revise the whole chapter before just going through this particular revision video topic. We go ahead further. Closing WIP, if you can see, closing WIP is given in the question 18,000 units. Fair enough that we have recorded 170. That is what they have given, 70 for wages and overheads for also 70. This is the degree of completion of closing WIP. Closing WIP is something what you would have started in the current year. It's a different point that you cannot complete, you could not complete, but that basically means that entire processing, whatever percentage they have given, would have taken place in the current year itself. So naturally, I'll write that 100%, 70%, and 70%. Right at this stage, some people will ask, sir, in opening also it was 100, but you wrote nil. In closing also it was 100, but you wrote 100, sir. Why? Array, you are comparing two wrong, or rather two different items. Opening WIP is something which was already complete at the beginning 100%. You write current year's processing percentage, you write current period's processing percentage. If it was 100% complete, what will you process it further? But entire closing WIP you have processed in this year itself, in this period itself. Certainly that becomes your current processing percentage. That is what we do, my dear friends. That is what we do. That is what even I have done over here. And the doubt as such doesn't even exist. But some people ask, my duty is to solve, I solved it. Abnormal loss, again the degree of completion is given. We will simply take it because we will consider that this entire abnormal loss units were processed in the current year itself. The degree of completion given is 180. So I'll write here 100%, 80%, 80%. Now how to fill up this table? Pretty simple, my dear friends, pretty simple. Consider on black color. This is 8,000. You will take 8,000, multiply with this 40%. Again, you will take this 8,000 and you will multiply this with 40%. So that's how you will write those figures. The whole table will be written accordingly, my dear friends. I will write it now for your benefit. Naturally, some calculations might be required from my side. This will be dash 3,200, 3,200. Naturally, all of them will be 1,50,000. This will be 18,000, no doubt, but 18,000 into 70%, 12,600. 12,600, 4,500, 3,600 and 3,600. Now when we start totaling, before we start totaling, please put a dash in all the percentage column. Otherwise someone will take a total right there 300% and suddenly will ask, sir, can you please help me understanding 300%? Arey, what to answer, man? How to answer that 300% thing? So please don't do that. We go ahead. Now we write the totals. I mean, come on. 150 plus 18 plus 4,500, 172, 500. 3,200 plus 150 plus 12,600 plus 3,600, 169, 400. See, I agree that the last column is identical, but there is no harm in checking. 169, 400. Now, what does these units mean? We have produced 172,500, 1,72,500 equivalent units material wise. We have produced 1,69,400 equivalent units labor wise. We have produced 1,69,400 equivalent units overhead wise. Now I'll take the total of total quantity column. Something very important coming up, guys, pay attention. 8,000 plus 150 plus 18,000 plus 4,500, that is 1,80,500. This total will always be your expected output. Yep, that's the most important point in my opinion. Of course, I will put a proof in front of you. Give me a second. Pay attention now. Total input, if you can see, I hope you still remember expected output, that is input minus normal loss. Total input 8,000 units was your opening WIP. 1,82,000 units is what you put in the current period. So 8,000 plus 1,82,000, this total becomes 1,90,000. From that I will subtract normal loss, which as you all can see right in front of you, 9,500 units. $1,80,500. This will always be your expected output. This is the precise reason, or should I say one of the reason, why you always subtract the abnormal gain in the statement of equivalent production. No doubt, even, I mean, as I said, one of the reasons, multiple reasons, like abnormal gain is already included in output. You are recording output over here, so naturally it will be subtracted. But this expected output thing is one of the biggest reason why you will subtract abnormal gain over here. Degree of completion of abnormal gain will always be 100%, for a simple reason that you expected some units to be lost. They came out as good units, naturally they are fully completed. So that is why degree of completion of abnormal gain will be 100 units. This note was important because I even wanted to cover the abnormal gain point, my dear friends. So I just did that. I am sure by now you are clear with the whole working note, and this is your working note number 1. Now we start with working note number 2. Nothing great involved in working note number 2, to be honest to you. We simply calculate working note 2, cost per equivalent unit. Just ensuring that things are little perfect. Now, over here, what do we do? Direct material, direct labor, and overheads. We have incurred some costs, charged some costs, whatever words that you prefer to use. All those costs are recorded in process account. Let me have a check. Material 737,500, labor 346,600. 737,500, labor 3,40,600, and overheads, if you can see, 1,70,300. Now, naturally, I want cost per equivalent unit. These are the equivalent units which I have prepared as per my working note 1. So I'll divide these costs by those units. The units are 172,500, 169,400, and 169,400. Don't forget, my dear friends, we are told that the normal loss is adjusted out of direct material cost. Wait! You have done the whole chapter, I believe you would know very well, way too well, that even if they don't tell you, you still do the same. Of course, it's a different point that I'm just trying to concentrate the same thing over here and carry out the instructions. Minus 47,500, that is nothing else but scrap value of normal loss. We'll calculate per unit figures. So that will be 4. 2.01 and 17300 divided by 169,400, 1.01. For simplicity purpose, I am rounding this off to 2 rupees and 1 rupee each respectively. And that, my dear friends, is your working note number 2. Now we move towards working note number 3. Again, just like working note number 2, a very simple working note, nothing great as such. Please remember this and remember this well. The whole basic idea of this type of question revolves around working note number 1 being successful. If that is correct, usually there shouldn't be a trouble. Usually, I might admit. We go ahead. What do we do in working note number 3? First, let me give the heading. Working note number 3, cost apportionment. Working note number 3, cost apportionment. In working note number 3, what do we do? We have already calculated number of units in working note number 1. We have calculated cost per equivalent unit in working note number 2. We simply multiply and we apportion the cost to every output item which we have calculated in working note number 1, and accordingly we calculate the values. We go ahead, guys. Working note number 3, cost apportionment, direct material, direct labor, and overheads. Let me give a line more to this. Apologies, but I'm a little perfectionist in all this. Yeah. So first output item was opening WIP processed further. In opening WIP process further, look at the units that we have made. Nothing as far as material goes, but 3,200 as far as labor and overheads. Nil, 3,200 and 3,200. Multiplied by cost per equivalent unit, rounded off to 2 and 1. 6,400 and 3,200. So this total will be naturally 9,600. Next output item was units started and finished. Units started and finished are 1,50,000 everywhere, as you can see. Pretty easy to calculate, luckily. 1,50,000, 1,50,000, and 1,50,000 into 4, 2 and 1. So this will be 6 lakhs, this will be 3 lakhs, and naturally this will be 1,50,000. This total will be 10,50,000. Next, let us look at the closing WIP units. As you can see, 18, 12,600 and 12,600. So closing WIP 18,000, 12,600 and 12,600 into 4, 2 and 1. So 18,000 into 4, 72,000. 12,600 into 2, 25,200, and finally 12,600. We'll take the total of all of them, 72,000 plus 25,200 plus 12,600, 1,09,800. And well, this finally is abnormal loss. Let us check the units which are given: 4,500, 3,600 and 3,600 everywhere. So 4,500, 3,600 and 3,600 into 4, 2, 1. 4,500 into 4, 18,000. 3,600 into 2, 7,200. And naturally this will be 3,600. So 18,000 plus 7,200 plus 3,600, 28,800. Well, that is our working note number 3. We need to take now some small steps to complete the problem. We know that our total output is made up of 2 items: opening WIP, of course, which was processed further, and the unit started and finished. Total value of opening WIP is what we need to find out, because we do not, I repeat, we do not know total value of opening WIP. See, what we know presently are few different figures, like how much was already incurred, how much we have incurred in this process to complete it, but I want the total value. Naturally, I have to add both of them. So I'll give the heading this way: total value of opening WIP completed. So first amount already incurred. We have discussed this multiple times. It's given in the question. Luckily at 75,000. And plus incurred in this period, this process, this year, whatever time frame that you prefer, incurred in this period, 9,600. 84,600. 84,600. That is the total value of opening WIP completed. So I've already created a chart. I'll write here 84,600. I already know total value of unit started and finished. We have calculated that, at 10,500. I'll create a line so that you can differentiate the totals from the other calculations. 10,50,000, that 10,50,000 is right here. If I want to find out total value of opening WIP, I had to take the already incurred figure and incurred in this process. Unit started and finished already given. Now, how to find the total value of output? Pretty simple. Let's term this as A, let's term this as B, and this total will give me total value of output transfer to next process 11,34,600. How did we get this? This is nothing else but A plus B. So 11,34,600. Now I can directly write that over here as 11,34,600. A small hitch, small issue, small problem, if whatever you may like to call it, is that if I write calculated figures, which I just calculated in working note 3 for abnormal loss and closing WIP, then the account will not tally. The reason is this: there is a rounding off issue over here. So now I have an option. I repeat, I have an option to take either of them as balancing figure. We got to tally the account, we have no choice. So now we can either take abnormal loss as balancing figure or we can take closing WIP as balancing figure. I decide to take closing WIP as balancing figure. No rule, this is just what I decide to do. So abnormal loss figure I'll check, which is 28,800 right in front of you. So I'll write that over here. And I will balance this account. So I'll take the total of debit side 75,000 plus 737,500 plus 3,40,600 plus 1,70,300, 13,23,400. Naturally, I'll have to write that at both places. 13,23,400 minus 47,500 minus 28,800 minus 11,34,600, 1,12,500. This is the balancing figure. And that, my dear friends, is the whole problem on FIFO I wanted to explain. I thought that this will be a good revision to all of you. We'll go ahead. Now, with that basic problem out of our way, with the detailed discussion, some problems based on FIFO which are there in our textbook. Let us discuss important points of all of them, just like what we have done for all the other chapters. Just wait for a second. Textbook right in front of you. Third problem, it was a basic problem on statement of equivalent production, or should I say concept of equivalent production, valuation of work in progress. No normal loss, no abnormal loss, no abnormal gain, nothing. Just a basic problem to give you an idea of concept of equivalent production. Fourth problem we just solved in detail right now. Fifth problem, it had abnormal gain. Of course, normal loss, no doubt about that, but it had abnormal gain. An important point to note that entire normal loss came out as an abnormal gain. So there was no point, or rather should I say, there was no units left to sell as a scrap. That was a highlight of this problem. Apart from that, very similar to fourth problem, except fourth problem had abnormal loss, fifth problem had abnormal gain. Now we move on to sixth problem, and the moment you look at this, you would have realized it's a long problem. No doubt about that, it was a long problem. Multiple points were involved. Don't worry, I'll mention all of them. But then it was a problem where a process account other than process 1 account was supposed to be prepared. So far we are preparing process 1. Now here it was process 3. So we were preparing an account other than process 1 account. Of course, apart from that, we were also not given opening WIP already incurred amount. which we had to calculate in this problem. One additional column of cost. I'm sure now you are remembering everything. One additional column of cost in working note 1, because we also had an output received from the previous process and we treat that as an item of material cost. So we had to prepare that additional column of cost in working note 1. Opening WIP process further, we used to put a dash in previous process material, whereas all other were 100% complete. A detailed discussion naturally was done in the lectures. There is no doubt about that fact. I'm just reminding you, opening WIP process further, P2 material or the material of the previous process we must have received in the previous year itself, but for all the other output items we would have received material in this year itself. So we will say 100, 100, 100. Entire processing takes place in the current year according to our theory of equivalent production. At this stage, it is very important for me to bring your attention towards one note in our theory. Just a second, my dear friends. Would like you to concentrate on this note. Pause the video, read this, and once you do that, then you read this as well. I'll just bring it again in front of you. These 2 points and the third point, this one. Pause the video, read this so that you realize the whole logic behind this particular point of this problem. Very important problem, no doubt, from the examination point of view, because of this point majorly. And one last point, the scrap value of normal loss units is supposed to be subtracted from previous process material. These are the points which are related to this. With this, major FIFO related issues get over, and now we shift to weighted average method. Now, as I just said, we move on to another method, weighted average method. Give me a second. I need to bring the question in front of you. Yes, I'm solving one weighted average question as well. Totally accepted. This is revision lecture. But then I somehow want to revise this topic very clearly with you guys. There are so many varieties. So unless I take 2 different samples, you will not realize the differences, etc. So I'm taking the problem. Just wait for a second. I'll bring the problem in front of you. That's the problem. Question number 8. From your material, please read. I'll also keep on scrolling. If you want, you can always pause the video and read this question. Make me invisible. And that's it. That's the problem which I'm going to solve. And of course, just like FIFO, I have kept the process account ready for all of you with basic workings and calculations so that we can move on to weighted average method very swiftly. Give me 1 minute. I will bring the process account in front of you. Process account is right in front of you. As you can see, I've written everything, including opening WIP's breakup given in the question itself. Material introduced, direct labor and overheads. They've told how to calculate normal loss. I have calculated normal loss. Note is also written right in front of you. If you wish, certainly you can pause the video and read that. And remaining parts I have mentioned in my process account. Only point is that there is an abnormal loss. I repeat, there is an abnormal loss. Now, when you say that there is an abnormal loss, what I am trying to tell you is that I came to know that there is an abnormal loss of 1000 right when I came to know that normal loss was 2000. How? Pay attention. Check the question. Question says that units scrapped are 3000. So when I say that this will be a 2000 units of normal loss, or in other words 2000 units are scrapped normally, that can only mean that 1000 units are scrapped abnormally. I'll make it little proper. And now guys, I would like to solve this problem further. Which method, etc. For that I need a fresh page, and I'll bring the fresh page in front of you. There it is. Now in this question, no method is specified. That is a precise reason why I have taken up this question to solve how to decide which method to use when no instructions are given. It's pretty simple. See, you have done FIFO in detail so far. I am talking about revision lectures. I am not talking about your regular lectures. There you have done everything. You have done FIFO so far. So, in FIFO, what did you do? In FIFO, you found out from the question, degree of completion of opening WIP in percentage. In another words, you found out how much is already completed. I'll write that in the bracket, already completed. Now, so after knowing how much is completed, you filled up those percentages which were yet to be completed. Or something which you processed in that year, that much you wrote. That gave you opening WIP processed further. And because of this, you could do an effective breakup of output in two parts, shall I say, how much opening WIP was processed further and how much units were started and finished. In this question, this is not given. If this is not given, you can't find out this one. You can't find out this one. You cannot have a breakup of output in this question, which means you can't follow FIFO. And if you can't follow FIFO, you follow weighted average method. So simple. So that's why, as I said, that's why I've taken up this problem. So to summarize, pay attention guys. I always create this box. So to summarize, when degree of completion of opening WIP in percentage is given, and this question actually gives you, check the question, breakup of opening WIP in rupees. And this is not given, you will follow FIFO. You don't have any choice. Whereas in this question, this was not given, this is given. You had no choice but to follow weighted average method. When both are given, naturally any method can be followed, though somehow I would prefer to follow FIFO because that is a specific method kind of. I would always prefer a specific method as against the average method. In fact, anyone would prefer a specific method as against the average method. So we have decided now to follow weighted average method in this question. For remaining calculations, naturally I'll need a fresh page and I'll take that right in front of you. Now, after deciding which method to follow, we will now prepare working note number 1. As I told you, I need a fresh page. So I'll give the heading working note number 1, statement of equivalent production. This is as per WAM, so in the brackets I'll mention WAM. WAM. Now, guys, while preparing this statement, I mean, we have done FIFO in detail. Wait. In detail in regular lectures also, in revision also we did it in detail. So it's pretty easy for us to understand now. On the left hand side, we will record all the output items. And 1. Now try to understand this output item. Yes, I have given the number 1. Try to understand this. The person or the organization who follows weighted average method does not bother from where his output is coming. Or in another words, he does not create a breakup between opening WIP process for the unit started and finished and all that. No, he does not get into all that. He simply says that 35,000 units are completed at the end of the year or period, whatever you call it. 35,000 units are completed. 2,000 units closing WIP. They were started, but they couldn't complete. Units started, but not completed. Or in other words, units incomplete. We call it closing WIP, separate point. But it is simply to be treated like that. It was started, couldn't be completed. So we do not have to separate output items for this, this output finished. We simply write one output item, units completed. Second output item, units incomplete. And naturally, we have spoken about normal loss, abnormal loss, etc. Normal loss will not be part of that statement of equivalent production. Abnormal loss will be part of that statement of equivalent production. We all know that. We have done that. I'll just bring it in front of you and we will write all that. Working note number 1, units complete. 2, units incomplete. We call it as closing WIP. And third and final output item is abnormal loss. Total quantity. Units complete, we know it is 35,000. Units incomplete, that is nothing else but closing WIP, we know it is 2,000. And abnormal loss, we know very well. I'll still check the process account for you. It is 1,000. Now, after that, we record the cost items on the right hand side. But before that, I'll take the total. This total will be 38,000. I told you earlier, I repeat again, we will always get expected output over there. Let me calculate this. I'll use the words total input over here. That was 2,000 plus 38,000. 2,000 was opening WIP. 38,000 were units input. So this will be 40,000 total input less normal loss. And that, my dear friends, is 2,000. Can I be invisible? And you see that 38,000 which you get over there. I want to go to the other side. Please take me to the other side. Thank you. 38,000 which you just saw, and that is what is your expected output. That is what you get over there. Now, as I said, cost items. In cost items, well, same old logic, number of cost items in the process account will be equal to, no, or rather our cost columns will be equal to cost items, whatever you call it. And when I look at this process account, I find the same amounts, that is material, labor and overheads. So three cost items, three cost columns, but again all of them will have the quantity percentage columns. So let me prepare that properly now. Yeah, I'm creating the table for you. Direct material, direct labor and overheads, and same headings, quantity percentage, quantity percentage, quantity percentage. Now, talking about degree of completion, I mean, guys, we have done this in too much detail. What can I tell you? Units complete. What can I discuss in the degree of completion of units complete? Naturally, they are fully complete. So I'll write 100%. And as far as units incomplete goes, it is nothing else but closing WIP. It's given in the question. Look at that. It is 100% and 80%. Closing work in progress. 80% is for both labor and overheads both. So this is 35,000. Naturally, this all will be 35,000 to be precise. This will be 2,000. It will be 1,600 and 1,600. And talking about abnormal loss, again look at the question. They have given degree of completion as 100 and 80% of units scrapped. So 100%, 80% and 80%. So naturally this will be 1,800 and 800. Don't forget to put this dash. Don't forget to put this dash. Someone will again write 300 and ask the meaning. Becomes impossible to teach at that point of time. Thank you. We go ahead. I mean, how to answer those questions here? Beyond me totally. 38,000, 35,000 plus 1,600 plus 800, 37,400 and 37,400. So that's about 8 working note number 1. Don't forget, in case there would have been abnormal gain, we would have subtracted, and degree of completion would have been 100%. No, I'm not shouting on you. I'm trying to remind you. That's it. Nothing else. We go ahead. Now, we talk about working note number 2. Cost per equivalent unit. As such, it will remain the same. As such, I said as such. I did not say that it will remain the same. As such, it will remain the same. So whatever is same part, at least let us finish that off. So direct material, direct labor and overheads. Whatever is the cost incurred, 1480, 359 and 1077. Naturally same figures as given in the question. So I'll write it from here: 14,80,000, 3,59,000 and 10,77,000. Naturally, we know very well by now that we need to subtract the normal loss units, or shall I say, sorry, normal loss in rupees, scrap value to be precise, from the material. We know that very well. Subtract. For scrap value, we will go back and we can see scrap value 40,000 rupees. Even this note would have told us 40,000 rupees. So minus 40,000. Usually to highlight it, I write it with black. Now, I already have equivalent units with me. I already have equivalent units with me. So I can obviously write it in the denominator. No doubts about that fact. So here 38,000, 37,400 and again 37,400. So far everything same. So what is the change? Guys, something pretty important. Pay attention. Concentrate, and I'll use a red color to grab your attention. Just a second. I totally agree. I repeat, I totally agree that we haven't bifurcated our output, that opening WIP has come and so on and so forth. That does not change the fact that some amount of opening WIP would have gone in some of the output items. How much, where, we don't know. But we surely know that it has gone. We very surely know that it has gone there, somewhere in one of the output items. In simpler words, opening WIP is somewhere there, somewhere in this total column, or it's somewhere here. Now that entire table is taken as a percentage of total quantity, which logically means that opening WIP is there somewhere in this, somewhere in this, somewhere in this. Make me invisible. I just wanted to show you that arrow, nothing else. Okay, fine. I know. Sorry, I shouted, but couldn't help, Had to take your attention. It's there. Opening WIP units are somewhere there. Or if I take up working note 2 in front of you, then opening WIP units are somewhere there in denominator. And in numerator also, we must have its cost, no? Denominator has units, numerator doesn't have cost. How that will be logical? We will have to write the cost, and we will write the cost. Sir, from where? I'll not get it from my home. No, look at the question at least. It's given. It's given in the question. At least look at that. It's given very clearly 80, 15 and 45. It's given. I'll just write that. Nothing else. Just a second. $80,000 plus 15,000 plus and 45,000 plus. That's it. That was a small point which I wanted to, explain to you. It's as simple as that. Nothing great. Trust me, nothing great than this. Now I will calculate the values, but now I'll shift to the usual blue. Minus 40 divided by 38 is 40. See, even you could have paused the video and you could have calculated, but you are not calculating. No, now don't calculate. I know that very well. So now wait. Now I will calculate. I know that very well. Goodness gracious me. 10. Now what's the point? I'm already calculating. And 30. That's it, guys. Those are the points which I wanted to explain this problem. You know, third working note is not something great. It's a mere multiplication, and hence I have kept the third working note ready for you. I will simply get that on your screen very quickly. There you go. The third working note is ready. I told you I have kept it ready. I mean, come on, that much we can do now. We have done entire FIFO working note 3 in detail. So this is what I can do. Now, luckily in this problem, there is no rounding of issues. So these figures which we have calculated, we can directly fill up in process account and the process account will tally. No issues whatsoever. Let us start filling that up. Output value, that is units completed 28 lakhs, closing WIP 1,44,000. So 28 lakhs, closing WIP 1,44,000, and the abnormal loss figure is 72,000. So that is what I do, and then I take the totals. So total of debit side 144 plus 1480 plus 359 plus 1077. Let's check that once. 30 lakhs 56,000, and the credit side total same 30 lakhs 56,000. That's it. With that, we end this problem, and I have given you enough information on weighted average method. Now we have done the requisite calculations for weighted average methods detailed explanation. Now, as usual, being a revision lecture, I'll start taking up the important points of the other questions. I'll need to bring the textbook in front of you for that. Wait a second. Textbook is right in front of you, my dear friends. Now, so in this problem, is very clearly we were told that it is average cost method, that is weighted average method. So we had to follow that. No choice left for this particular situation. But what other points that we had to remember were, first, we are told that the defects in this units are identified at finished rate, that is the abnormal loss degree of completion should be 100% as per the question. That's given instruction in the question. And the next line which I would like to highlight is this one: material for product put in the process at the beginning of the cycle of the operation. This clearly will tell you that the entire material required for closing WIP will be put in this year. So degree of completion of material for closing WIP will be 100%. A very important point from this problem's point of view. And well, one of those questions where the value of a normal loss, or should I use exact words, scrap value, was not given. So in very technical words, we will call such normal loss as weight loss. But anyways, that's just a technical wordings. That was about this particular problem. Nothing great as such in this particular question, but whatever points were there, I have explained. Going towards the 8th problem, no point to discuss that. We have done that in detail. 9th problem. Well, this was a problem of process account other than process 1 account in weighted average method. But yet another feature of this problem was that opening WIP is nil, as you can see right on your screens. So for us, results under FIFO and weighted average method will remain same, or very simple words, solution under both methods will remain same. That is what the point of this question was. And well, right at the start I told you different value for abnormal loss units. This was the question. Different scrap value for abnormal loss units. Scrap value for normal loss units was 4.5. Abnormal loss scrap value is 9. But then again, nothing great in this question apart from these points. These points are important from this problem's point of view. We go ahead and read this question. Way too simple question. In fact, it's almost like you are doing the same thing twice. But then two process accounts are involved. So our time will go in case such problems are asked in the question. Only normal loss is there in second process. Very simple, but don't forget two process accounts, and you cannot forget one more point. Packing material will directly be added to the value of output. That is as per instructions given in the question. We are told we are following that, but then that is what you got to do in this particular question. That's about it, guys. Nothing great as such. Question 11. This problem was presented differently to you. You were asked to calculate multiple things, loss, etc. See, guys, materials input, so many things. The best thing to do, first prepare process account, but only on quantity basis. You'll come to know the input. Yep, that's how it is to be solved. Prepare process account, but only on quantity basis. Just like quantity. In very technical words, that is known as a quantity tally. Yeah, that's a technical word, guys. If you don't remember, that's okay. But then I need to tell you the truth. That is remembered as that is known as a quantity tally. Prepare, you will come to know the input quantity. Then you will find the loss to be segregated in normal, abnormal. In this problem, when you prepare process accounts, you are given cost per equivalent unit. In another words, in our words, we are directly given answer of working note number 2. So you do reverse calculation to find the debit side figures, and when you do reverse calculation, since the calculations are reversed, normal loss is being added. Yes, to find out CPU we subtracted, but since we are doing reverse calculation, normal loss gets added to this particular scenario. These are the important points from this particular question's point of view. In my humble opinion, these questions become very important because they are presented differently. A good chance that a student might get confused if he is not paying proper attention. This is till question number 11. And now I'll move on to question number 12. Inter-process profit. Points to remember: you can either follow FIFO or weighted average method. Both the methods are valid for solving this question. Output of one process gets transferred to another process at a profit. That's given in the question. Don't forget, whatever workings you write, please write it well. That will make solving of the problem much easier. Very easier. Also, don't forget, stocks in the process are to be valued at prime cost. So be careful with that working. And finally, when you record sales, closing of the account will become very important. Be careful with that part as well. These are the points. Of course, this problem, once you will solve, only then you will realize what is happening. But then these are the points which I thought I must remind you regarding this particular problem. So I have done that. My next screen will make you really happy is what I believe, and I'll bring that up in a minute. So I just said one screen to make all of you happy. There is the screen which I was talking about. The whole chapter is summarized in this particular page. Nothing is left, my dear friends. Once you will go through this, revision of entire chapter will happen practically within 15 minutes. Make me invisible! But I'm sure in case you would need to read more, you would pause the video and you will check that. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much for your time, support, and patience. I'll see you again in another video with one more chapter. Thank you so much, everyone.